All right, can you hear us now? Are we talking? Is anything coming across? Because we've got a thumbs up from Mr. Production off camera.
Oh, did we? I hope so, boy. We'll just have to keep talking, and let's see. I did 2 at first, Fragan. Yes, yes, it was all you. It was all you.
All right, so
Nerd Fraganator says we're good. Yes. All right. And our production guy gives a thumbs up. He has now exited the building. All right, so you folks missed so much incredible D&D information. Oh my gosh.
Insights that we spilled.
Your games would never have been the same again.
Yes. But unfortunately, I can't recall exactly what was said. So we'll just have to toss those concepts to the side and come back to them at some point in time.
Yep.
When the inspiration of the ages comes back to us. But let's throw it off and restart this.
Sure.
Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I am Nerdarchist Ted, and tonight I am hanging out with this amazing gentleman,
Nerderdug.
So, we get to do this thing every week where we talk to, it's usually just our patrons, but we've opened it up to everybody since, there's all this, wonderful world-ending crap going on to help hopefully brighten your spirits and add some more gaming and nerdery to your daily or weekly life. So if you're a patron, thank you so much. If you're not, feel free to consider. No trying to do a hard sell. We're just having a conversation about, our gaming this weekend. If you're already on this channel, and you might already know that Friday night I ran a sponsored game for RPG Crate.
That's right.
Session 9 of the Chaos Crew. I do believe that things are progressing, that game might wind up having a new sponsor for next month. But,
great.
Things are slightly up in the air. But, anyway, that game will progress one way or another for 3 more sessions to conclude the story with the Arcanium. So worry not, dear D&D watchers.
And that's cool because the group to just become friends and enjoy gaming with each other too. So it'd be nice to.
Absolutely.
Speaking of ending your campaign, that oddly enough is a great segue for what first caught my attention about the topic of tonight's chat, which is Treasures of the DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which we both have our copies right here. While there certainly are treasures of the physical sort in the book, we also just sort of thought of it in broader terms, or just like little things and nuggets and little artifacts that might go forgotten or unnoticed in the DMG that we thought were surprising or caught our attention just doing a flip through. And as far as campaign ending, that's actually one of the things I was just flipping through, and there's so much stuff in the DMG. I was like, there's no way I'm going to make a list of all this stuff. I might as well just go through the book and like every header, right? But this one actually caught my attention. It says it's ending a campaign. It's in chapter 1, A World of Your Own. And it's fairly long. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But it was basically saying, whether your campaign goes from 1 to 20 or it's only 4 or 5 sessions, it's a good idea to give the characters some sort of denouement, basically, even if it's just narrative, like, hey, what did your characters do after you defeated the big bad evil thing, right? And it's just saying how if you decide to play another campaign, maybe those characters can be like the stories that your new heroes hear about, right? And it's not something like that was really neat, where it's not mechanical or anything like that, but in the sense that it is a Dungeon Master's Guide in a storytelling sense too, right? Where that's just sort of like a good narrative tip and sort of like gleaned from experience. Or players like that. I mean, I do. I've had DMs do that for me, and I've done it. And it's cool, when you want to think just like many stories, after you ride off into the sunset, what happens? Or when the credits are rolling, where did your character go? And it's basically just, in essence, just saying here's a way to use player agency to give them that.
When I look at my long history of gaming, very rarely was there a campaign that actually wrapped up. and we've shared on the channel. I'm not going to go into detail, but there was literally only one story that I was a player in that we actually got to a culmination as what I refer to as the Nerdarchy group, that we actually told a finished tale. Now, a couple of gaming groups that I was a part of with college, we got, we actually told some completed stories. I ran a campaign in college that, was more exploratory and role playing. We actually dialed down the mechanics of combat to have it be a more over the top game. And everything was literally just a contest of a D20 roll. It was definitely a lot of fun. I'd love to do something similar at some point in time. If I can ever go down those roads again. But I ran that game to a completion, and it came to an abrupt conclusion because the ending kind of sprang on them. They didn't realize they were that close, and everybody was thirsting for so much more. And I could understand, like, that desire to, well, can I get a wrap up? Can I take this a little bit more? I definitely feel like I did a disservice to my friends. And then, so like those kind of things are out there. They absolutely happen. But I've managed to run two, successful 5th edition campaigns. I'm, several sessions already into my third. So it's definitely a fun time. And in the third campaign, it is absolutely nods to the second campaign. Some of the characters are actually continued from second to third. So
wait. Have you wrapped up your Zoltan Part 2 basically?
No. Zoltan Part 2 is still happening.
Oh, that is the third one.
That is the third one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. And it struck me just. I mean, me. I flip through the DMG a lot just because it's like, well, I mean, it is the most basic thing. It's like if you want an official answer to something. But I kind of had a different perspective on it today as I was flipping through it, where, I don't even, it is really like a guide, right? I mean, in a sense, there's nowhere that says like, this is how this must work, whether it's weather or travel or something. So it really is a resource like that where, you really do only need the basic rules to play. And, I know that one of your favorite things about 5th edition is that sort of just sort of ruling power it puts into everybody's hands, really. I mean, the dungeon master, but it's certainly we all extend that to the players as well in our games, right? So it really is like a guide in the sense of like, well, if the player asks like, well, what's the weather like? How does that affect our travel? It is in here, and you could do it like that, or you could cobble together your own thing. I mean, it even says in here, it's like, here's a way you might want to think about tracking weather or whatever, right? Oh, go ahead. Say.
You said something I want to interject on. It absolutely is a guide. It has the answers to almost every question that that a player is going to ask that's not handled in the player's handbook or what the monsters can do. Mm-hmm. But that aspect of it is not in control, you are, and that is summed up even in this book on the D&D rules help you and the other players have a good time, but the rules aren't in charge. You're the DM, and you are in charge of the game. Mm-hmm. So, it goes on further to explain other things, but to me, having a whole lot of experience with 5th edition or with D&D in general, once I understood the core mechanics, I honestly have not read this book cover to cover. I've probably read through a decent chunk of it, flipping through here and there. We had a lot of things that we talked about in videos early on, but it's been, read, digested, and most of it probably forgotten. Yeah. So like every time I turn to it, oh, this is a really cool thing. Why am I not using this? Or here's a cool section. I've been improvising this on the fly. Because if you are confident and comfortable as a game master of any rule set, a lot of what's here are things to help support running a game.
Yeah. And I think that speaks a lot to, the player's trust of you too, after all this time, like, if they want to do something like it's a fine line, and you know we talk about this when we talk about say third edition, right, where like there's so many rules and it's really to the benefit of the players because it's a way for them to be like, well, this is how I know this thing I'm going to do is going to work, right? And so I feel good when like players that play with me a long time, and as I'm sure you do too, it's like, well, they trust you that your rulings are fair and it's a fun time, so that you don't need to know like everything in here verbatim, and they don't either because it's like, well, you know, I that you that your players in your game don't need to like calculate it to that extent. We're like, I have got to know that this is going to be successful and like game it beforehand because it's, you know, they trust you. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to try what I think is cool and I'm probably going to have a fun time, and Ted will just figure it out, right? I mean, that's, you know, that's what you trust your DM to do, you know, so you can't, you don't have to like say like, well, I should have been able to do it because it says here that, you know, blah 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 or whatever.
100%. I feel uh, like one of my weaknesses is traps, puzzles, that kind of stuff. And if I don't
Mm-hmm.
overly plan for those things, I don't know the section for oh, what is the damage per level for a trap? But it's
Yeah, yeah.
it's absolutely there. I actually had something literally show up in the mail today to help me in those things. Treacherous traps from Nord Games.
Yeah,
The,
that looks really cool. I
the,
remember
the
seeing that.
definitive guide to creating traps, hazards, and puzzles for your fantasy adventure. So this is something I just want to open my brain and just shove the whole book in to improve my DM game because as a DM, as with anything that you have a interest in, you should be seeking to improve yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
I acquire knowledge so that I can become a better game master because I really love and care about this hobby. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but that section as I was talking about, it is in here, and it's actually probably on even one of my notes for the evening. Um, yeah, here we go. It is on page 121 of your Dungeon Master's Guide. It has your DCs, your attack bonuses, and your damage based on character level as whether you want it to be a setback, dangerous, or deadly. You want to absolutely kill a character? Boom. First through fourth level, deadly damage is 4 die 10. Boom.
Wow.
You can absolutely kill those characters with that
Mm-hmm.
kind of damage. And if that's the kind of game that you're looking for, it has the prep that's in here, and it's not just a simple chart, but those are that's the thing that like I honestly need to like just cut that out of the DMG or take a picture and tape it up in front of wherever I'm gaming,
Mm-hmm.
because all I need to do that, I can handle the rest. I don't care whether it's a spike trap or a full, spinning blade, blade trap or boulder trap or any number of other things. Having those things is banned.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just a lot of little treasures in the DMG to like to really just give you inspiration for all sorts of things. I mean, you know, tavern name generators, or you know, one of my favorite things, speaking of actual treasures, is like not magic stuff or coins, but just like treasures that have a little bit of detail. You know, like I was just flipping through it, and it was, you know, like a jewelry box with some initials engraved on it or something. And that's the kind of stuff that like players just, you know, the more things that you include in details just gives like more things for players to interact with too. And it's like, you know, even a little detail, they wonder like, well, whose initials are those? You know, maybe we should try to find this person, just things like that. So
So a random piece of treasure has the capacity to become its own quest giver,
yeah.
possibly leading to new adventures, possibly leading to new dangers, possibly leading to new treasures. Like it depends on what you're looking for.
I'm
I
pretty sure most of the uh, adventures we've had on those bastards are just because we thought something or another about an object or a person, or you know, and just spent
well,
a bunch of time convincing ourselves that was the truth.
that's a special group because in that group we really don't have anyone to be the intellect. Um, Prudence is wise,
Mm-hmm.
but we're all barely average,
Mm-hmm.
or or below, your character has only a +1, modifier, a 13,
Mm-hmm.
and you are the brains of our group. So
Yeah.
the person who rages and loses control of himself when we get into a fight, he's the one to direct us. My character's the idiot pretty boy, and I don't know how many of our viewers actually watched Friends, but I was told aim for Joey. That should be your guideline, and I'm like, I don't want to create a dump stat intelligence ever again.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. When one of the comments that TJ says they got back into D&D after 25 plus years, got the basic combat rules down. That was it. And really, I mean, I was thinking about that the other day. So, like, a lot of the mechanical danger in D&D is combat, right? Like, where there's like quantifiable consequences. You lose hit points, whatever. Or use of your spell slots and things. And I kind of, from that sense, I get that that perspective, like, D&D is just about combat and all that, and a lot of it is. But speaking of, again, treasures in the DMG, there is things for social stuff too, if you are so inclined. Like, I believe there's a table, like, depending on what their disposition is, if you use like persuasion or whatever, it goes up or down. There's morale in there and stuff like that. Just ways to influence NPC behaviors. So, that sort of things in there. I guess there's just no like listed consequence to that. But those could be even greater stakes in a combat. I mean, if you're trying to, talk your way out of being like executed or something like that, I'd say there's a pretty dire stakes.
Well, I mean, honestly, the entire game, we predicate. I wish I had a D20. I do have a D20 on hand. We run this game, with this random die to determine success or failure. Once the game gets started. But honestly,
Mm-hmm.
we can pull out dice and determine the game with just this book. Page 73 is your adventure type's random roll chart. Do you want a dungeon goal or do you want a wilderness goal? I roll my D20, boom. All right, we need to foil a villain's evil scheme in a dungeon. Or, if I
Mm-hmm.
roll on the other chart, find a place to establish a colony. Each of those things are evocative enough
Yeah.
that you can then begin crafting. But it
Hey,
goes
let me ask. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
but it goes even further because there are other goals, adventure villains, adventure introduction, adventure climax. All of these are a chart. You then can go further in the book for a random roll chart to roll up exactly what that villain is, what are their goals, what are their motivations. Like, you can go
Yeah,
through
what's their
all
personality?
of this. And long ago, Nate did this whole thing
Oh yeah, yeah.
where he, for those of you who actually have been with us long enough to know Nate the Nerdarch, but he ran an entire campaign. We didn't film it or any of that kind of stuff, but he ran a game where everything was predicated on this randomly rolled thing, and it was just amazing. And
It's enlightening.
you can randomly roll your treasure ahead of time if you know what's going to be there, and have these things. Yes, I understand that as a DM, doing all of this random roll prep work can be weird, but it can also be so much fun. As you don't have to worry about, well, what do I do next?
Yeah, yeah.
The book,
Hey,
it,
let me ask you this. In light of what you just said too, I was thinking that. Do you ever feel like, I don't want to say jealous, but or say envious of, like, say somebody just starts playing D&D, right, and they get this, and they don't know anything about, like, they've never seen people stream, they don't watch videos, and they just, like, to them that is how you play, right? I'm kind of envious, like, because I know it would be clunky if you were rolling all those times and stuff, like, whereas we probably prefer like a faster pace, or like, yeah, okay, yeah, I know, you take those things for granted, but that sounds like a wildly fun time. I mean, even as the DM, to just be thinking like, I don't know what's in this chest, let's find out, and like, I suppose to some extent, for after all this time of gaming, maybe some of those things seem like making those things random seems too arbitrary for like you as a game master. It's like, well, I would know what's in the chest. It's the chest of this, villain, blah blah blah. So of course you wouldn't have this weird stuff in there.
My only problem with that is if you have an intelligent foe and he has a magic item that's supposed to be a reward,
They would be using it.
that would aid him in combat.
Yeah.
Whether it be a healing potion or a magic sword. And look at this, the guy fought with a sword the whole time. Like, those are the kind of things that, that bother me. Now, maybe you are quick enough on your feet that, there is a story there. Maybe you want to seek that out. Well, maybe there was a reason he didn't use this particular sword. And that develops, and that story goes on farther.
The best is when the players, like, just talking amongst themselves, concoct that whole thing. They'd be like, why wouldn't he have used that sword in combat? It's awesome. Like, I don't know, maybe there's some reason he can't use it, and then they start concocting, like, why wouldn't he? We should probably investigate this. And you're like, oh, okay, sure. It's like, I don't know. I just thought it was in there for treasure reward. But if you want to track down the reason why they were using it,
but
sure.
Creative and high thinking people might go down that road.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at that kind of stuff, and to me, that is like, it's story gold. The players have attached themselves to something that happened in the game, and it is pushed a thought pattern forward. And when players do that, their buy-in is so much stronger, and I am all for it. So I encourage it. I look for it. I try to make this kind of stuff happen.
Yeah. And to circle back around to the topic, taking all of what you just said right in, because that can be intimidating for a lot of DMs. I mean, I'll admit, even myself included, sometimes when it goes like off in a whole other direction, it's like, I don't know what to do. That's another time when you could just use, it's like, and in those instances, I don't know, maybe this is helpful for people out there that might think like, but I want it to be smooth. I find that if you're going to use the gamey part of a game, just be explicit about it. Like if that happened to me and I'd say like, well, I don't know what is going, I wasn't expecting that. I'm going to roll and we'll find out, would tell the players like, I'm going to roll on this random chart because that isn't something I expected, but let's find out and go that way, so it makes it a little like it's like a nice candy coating on the clunky mechanics part of it when you're just like, you're not trying to like slyly do it on the side sort of thing. You know what I mean?
In my Dawnbringers game, anytime something goes wonky, and the DM really isn't sure, how successful something is going to be, he plays the game of the sliding scale. He picks, what do you call it? He picks a percentile of how successful or how likely something is to have happen, and you roll percentile. So then if it's a 15% chance, all right, well, then you pick a number and you've got to get within 7%,
okay.
Whatever.
Oh, so you get to pick any number. So if you picked like 20, it could be like 27 or 13.
Well, you roll the percentile dice,
mm-hmm.
and you have to get within that range that he's got.
Right. Okay.
So it's not always, oh well, you've got to roll higher, you've got to roll low.
Right.
He's got his own chart that he moves up and down.
Okay.
So we both roll percentile dice, and then our numbers have to be within a certain, whatever the listed percentage of each other. So
I like those moments because they kind of like they kind of are just a little reminder that you're still playing a game.
Right.
Like it's like, I love getting immersed in the story. Obviously, we get whisked away by those bastards in many games that we play. But yeah, I like those things where it's like, okay, it's still a game. There's still some random chance to it. And it's not like weird, like narratively to think like, well, why would you just leave this 3 inches? Like, I don't know, because it's a game. It's fun. I don't want to know what's going to happen all the time.
Right. So like, as an experienced player, there are times where I feel like I have to be careful because in a movie or a TV show, there is a script and everybody has their lines and, okay, well, this episode is going to focus, a lot on Steve and next week's episode is going to focus a lot on Marilyn, whatever have you. And I am boisterous. I'm not a big guy, but I am definitely one who I like to, insert myself so that I'm a part of what's going
Yeah,
on.
it's fun. You want to play?
But when I'm playing and streaming and whatnot, I try to be aware, and I don't ever want
Mhm.
anyone to feel like, Ted is trying to take over, or whether I want to become, the main character. I no. I like to be a part of what's going on, and if people are not as jumpy or as raise your hand and talk as I am, like I try to be aware, and I
Yeah.
know enough now that I can be like, hey, let's see if I can bring this person into the conversation.
Yeah, as I say, I mean, it's all in your approach. Most of the time I at least try to, and I suspect you do as well. It's like, well, I'm trying to interact with the other players. Like, I'm not trying to like take over a conversation. So a lot of that's just like remembering things about their characters and just, mentioning it and sort of just treating others like you would hope you characters treated, where it's like, well, yeah, I was listening to you when you said your character liked, this food or was on this quest or had this goal or whatever, right? I mean, you're in life and death situations with these people, or whatever kind of story you have. You're in a long term relationship of some kind or another with these people, right? So it only makes sense to pay attention to what the other players are saying and help their story along too, and then they'll probably do the same for you.
Absolutely.
And it's fun too. I mean, it's neat to listen to. I want to know what the other characters are. I mean, it's fun to have like secrets and stuff, but what's the use of that character secrets if you never tell anybody? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it's cool to have things that are going to kind of build out and create the story.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a real person says, okay, this is a sensitive subject for me.
Yeah.
Until I feel like I've got enough of a bond, literally using D&D terms, bond,
Yeah.
with these characters, with these people. I am not willing to share that. What if they look on me harshly? What if they judge me? You can have these moments, but you shouldn't ever go into a game with a secret and you're like, I never want this to come out.
Yeah. Right.
Then there's no point.
It's okay if the character never wants it to come out.
Right. But as
Right.
a player,
Yeah.
you have
It's like, of course I want it to come out. That's the more the character doesn't want the secret to be known, the more you do. It's like, it's juicy. Right?
So when I create backstories, these days I try to make sure that there is some, juicy detail,
Mm-hmm.
can come out later so that when, it gets found out, when people know in one way, shape, or form or another, it's like, oh man, the game might change from this moment forward. Um, I guess my longest running active character at this point in time is the one in Jake's game on Thursday nights. Um,
Yeah, really. You've been playing him for years, huh?
it's been quite a while at this.
It's been at least like a year and a half, right?
I want to say about a year and a half.
Yeah, that's fun, man. That's rewarding.
But
you really feel like you get to know a character and the other people and the other characters in the party.
It's a great mix. I love gaming with all of them. There's going to be a slight hiccup in a couple of weeks as one of the players is potentially going away for a bit. It might be months without them.
Oh.
But Jake's son is actually going to be joining the game.
Okay.
Going to actually get to meet another family member and see how that transpires. But we're losing our mage, so little worried about the intelligence of the group going away.
Oh, V?
No, M from Dice on Ice.
Oh, yeah. Isn't she like a what is she?
Warforged Wizard.
Yeah.
Transmuter.
Oh, that's cool.
I have their transmuter stone. So it's a bit amusing that I did something cool for him early on in the game,
mm-hmm.
and he's like, I think you should have this. So I resist lightning damage, but I don't think I've ever taken lightning damage. And it really felt bad when Fig took lightning damage. So I was like, oh god, I want to give this back, but he said no.
Um,
But in that game, my character absolutely has secrets, and I've shared a little bit here and there. He's got a bit of an oddity because he can talk to spirits that follow him around. Because I took a different take on the Path of the Ancestral Barbarian.
mhm.
So like there's a lot of fun elements, with that game. But until like something happens to kind of push the next thing, like I don't know if I've got to share. And
Yeah, yeah.
there's some crafting going on behind the background, which I'm gonna tie back into my next note that I have on page 129 of your DMG. There is a section for creating magic items.
Hmm. I
So
know
like,
that's like one of the more frequent things you see people lament, like a lack of crafting. There's no crafting, and people are like, oh, there's a crafting in Xanathars. It's in the DMG too. I mean, there's so much stuff in downtime. That's probably one of my favorite parts of the DMG. Like, oh, so many things that people are like, I want to do this, I want to do this. It's downtime, like building a business, buying and selling magic items, crafting stuff, gaining extra skills, gaining languages, carousing, one of my favorites,
you know, I
crafting magic items.
with third edition, crafting magic items was a
Yeah, oh yeah.
very big part of the game.
Didn't
It,
you have to spend your experience
you,
points?
you
And you
had
had
to
to have those feats,
you needed the feats, which took away from your combat prowess
Mm-hmm.
because you weren't selecting other things. It took your XP, so you were gaining levels slower than other characters, but you were able to make things. So like, hey, I can make this for you, but it's gonna cost me what have you. So here I'm glad to see that there is no actual XP cost anymore. That was
Yeah.
to me, that was a disservice to the game. Why would people make magic items? Oh, I don't have the level to make that anymore because I made something. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Um,
there are creation costs. There are minimum levels to create it.
mhm.
So hey, you want to make a legendary magic item? You need to be 17th level, and you need 500,000 gold pieces.
I never got the appeal of that though, honestly, because it's like, you're an adventurer. Like, I want to go out and find that stuff from the ancient realms, and if they did want to craft it, I always liked it when it was more like an adventure that the DM sort of bought into too, where like, you got to get
Well,
like a hair from a unicorn's mane, and you know what I mean, where it's not just like, okay, well, mechanically, I'm gonna take this off box off and my gold, and blah blah
so
blah. Now I have like a staff of the magi,
so
or whatever.
if you want to go through the hey, can I combine quest things? Can I do this and that? Like you can absolutely go down that road.
Sure.
Questing for a magic item versus questing for rare reagents. Both of those things are kind of cool, but why would you choose to make an item versus to going and finding an item? Occasionally, there are times where somebody has something that means something. Um, you know, again, I brought this up because my character in the mini terrain domain game, the Dawnbringers, he is actually going to be making a magic item,
Okay.
and he wants to actually do the smithing, the forging. I can't reveal too much. I
Sure.
don't know exactly what it's going to look like when it's done. Um, but I will say that spoiler for those people who are watching both games, my character's cousin, Jeremy's character, Talmud, he's been carrying from day one an ancestral hammer that has belonged to his family. It's non-magical. It's just just a big
Yeah.
maul, and it's his favorite weapon. But the problem is, we're 11th level at this point in time. We're fighting a lot of things that require magic items. So he's got Ghost Cleaver, which is a great axe, and that's all great and all.
But you
But
want to use that well.
most of the time, he wants to use them all.
Mhm.
Well, as a cleric and paladin, I have access to spells. And as a worshiper of Moradin, the god of smiths,
It's his
I
jam.
I should be creating things. I should be having, when I have,
Yeah, yeah, really. You guys, that is could not be more on brand.
I should be in front of a forge.
Sure.
I have Forge Fane, which is a, amazing warhammer. It's a +3 weapon. It's essentially a dwarven thrower, but on top of that, it is a legitimate portable anvil because
Yeah, that's right.
I can shrink. I can, make the half disappear and have it grow into a legitimate anvil. Or if I have some kind of magical anvil somewhere, I can have the whole hammer shrink down and turn into any kind of smithing tool that I want. So it's super cool and very thematic for a
Yeah.
board in. But I am in the process, and I have got a litany of items that I've been collecting,
Really?
both related to the quest that we're on and symbolic to the actual other character. I have got notes taken as if I was doing a ritual for each of those ingredients. I've been going through this whole thing so that when we have downtime again, I'm going to go through this
Oh,
process.
that's really cool.
And next session, we actually have some downtime because we were in a really hard fight.
Oh, yeah.
We all nearly died.
Against, was it that Black Dragon? Or is that a different game?
No. We were fighting some kind of Elder Fire Elemental.
Ooh, okay.
Four fire Myrmidons.
Yeah, those are badass.
When the Myrmidons were killed, they turned into the Flame Skulls.
Whoa, jeez.
And a Vrock.
Wow, that sounds like an incredibly epic battle for sure.
The DM started off the previous session by dropping a ton of damage on us with a giant unexpected fireball. So the fight started with the wizard on the ground.
Oh my gosh.
And most of us at a third or less of our hit points.
Whoa. Yeah, that is.
Against all of that. That's where we started initiative. So I won't give you any more details than that. But it was brutal what transpired in that game. So yeah. So we got out of Dodge, and we're going to go through a long rest, and there's going to be some conversations.
Sure.
So the part that I spoke to the player and the DM about is, again, spoiler alert. Plug your ears if you are watching the game and don't want to hear this. But as both characters that are involved in this, magic item creation are, Path of the Ancestral Guardian barbarians. And I talk to my, priest mentor who follows me around as a spirit that nobody else sees unless I'm raging. I'm going to ask him to communicate with my cousin's spirits.
Oh, okay, cool.
To find out if one of them wants to inhabit the hammer when I turn it into a vessel.
What a great storytelling plan.
So basically. Because the way when I rage, my ancestral spirits come out and they do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
When Jeremy's character rages, he rolls randomly, and he's got I think a D6 roll chart, and whoever he picks, that person inhabits his body, dictates the character's fighting style. So he never actually is conscious when his spirits come out. So he never actually sees who's out and fighting and how things are
Interesting.
going.
That's a cool role-playing thing.
So, each of us are very different in how we're playing this particular barbarian. So this will actually give him the chance that when he's not raging, he'll actually be able to communicate with one of his ancestors.
Oh, that's great. That's touching.
So, but so yeah, page 129 if you want to look at making magic items.
Another thing that I really find helpful as a DM, from just a basic, I don't know what I'm going to run, I have no idea, is maps, right? And there's even some pretty cool ones back there. There's some pretty large dungeon ones that I was chuckling as I looked at them, because that would take so long to go through some of these, where they're 50, 60 room dungeons. But even the first one is just a windmill, and I was like, that is such an awesome first to third level adventure, right? I mean, there's 3 floors, There's the moving windmill thing. There's a basement. I mean, who knows? It's all like decrepit. It's like maybe there's a ghost in there. I mean, it looks great in the sense also that there isn't a bunch of rooms. So if you wanted to use all those rolling charts in here, like what's in the room, what's in the barrels in the room. I mean, there literally is tables for all that stuff. What's in containers? What's on bookshelves? What is this? Old notebook that you found stuffed in a drawer? Is like doodles and sketches is the answer to that. On one of the things. But yeah, I mean, so that sort of thing. Some of them are really cool. Like there's one of sort of this island city on the next page. And I was like, that could really just inspire your whole world building, thinking like, wow, that looks so basically it looks like there's, an ocean and just like big rocks that have like maybe it was like a big rock that was split apart. There's just like little settlements on top with rope bridges. It's like that's totally inspiring me. Like that looks awesome. I would love to describe that to players, and it just has just enough of that fantastical quality. So, and like I said earlier, I can imagine being like somebody that just started playing D&D and getting all inspired from this. But even somebody that's been playing for 25 years and has looked through all the DMGs, I still find things that are like, oh, that's neat. I want to try that next time. Weird locales.
Well,
and players, I mean, imagine this, like, right, the people, oh, travel's boring, right? And you say, okay, well, on your way to the next town, you see a giant crystal shard protruding from the ground. They're going to stop and look. Right?
Absolutely.
A canyon containing a dragon's graveyard is just like a random thing you might see, on the road. Imagine that.
Wow. I could only imagine, like, what a typical mage would do.
Yeah.
Found a dragon's graveyard of like, dragon bone, dragon scale, teeth, claws. What can I take? Oh my god!
And even just our academic curiosity too. Like, is this some mythical place? Why would dragons come here to die? Were they killed here? And I guess I would say to caution those things only because of what we're talking about. Like, if you just thought like, hey, I'll make some cool vista on the way to where they're going. Good luck, because if you're going to take out the goblin bandits, but they see a river ferry guided by a skeletal captain. They'll probably, or here's a floating earth moat with a tower on it. It's just a random thing. It's like, that sounds a lot cooler than the goblin bandits, right? Like, probably going to go check that out.
And in those cases, all right, well, let's turn to, that section I mentioned earlier. What is there? Let's go to that random adventure and see how you can work with it.
And I guess that's the trick of DMing too, right? It's like when you don't know, whether you're first time DM or you've been doing it for a long time. That's what's cool about things like this, having these guides, for when you don't know there is something. But the more you DM or whatever, you don't need to roll as much, because it's like, well, what it's, you can fudge, what's in the barrel or what's on that scroll they found on the shelf. And then you can start, when you're more confident in that sort of thing, that's when you start adding in, like, it's related to one of the player's character's backstories that they find the note on the shelf. And then it really gets juicy, because, like, why is this here, right? Why does this guy have this, letter about my family or whatever?
And that comes down to, the variety of styles of running is, are you, an over prepper, an under prepper, how confident are you in DMing on the fly versus, just, all right, well, I need to have every little detail
out.
And no style is wrong as long as everybody is having fun.
Yeah, you can even do that stuff in published adventures. I mean, if you're playing, Tyranny of Dragons and somebody's backstory is like they're looking for their long lost brother or whatever, maybe they're in the dragon cult. I mean, that like is, I guess, doing that, not as much on the fly, but with a little bit of prep, just even thinking like, okay, well, what do I want their brother to do? But you could certainly, do that. Like, maybe they're infiltrating a dragon cult base and they take some prisoners and that is their brother or whatever.
But I mean,
still playing the same campaign, but it's like, well, now you're kind of giving it to play. That's what you wanted. You wanted to find him. What are you gonna say?
these days, I would have to say that, or I would dare to guess that, Matt Mercer is probably, the most famous DM for fifth edition. And
Yeah.
I have not seen 103 yet, but I did catch up to 102 over the weekend. Um, and
Yeah.
I thought they used to drop it at noon on Mondays, and it didn't
Mhm.
drop till.
Are you talking about that long spoiler?
Uh, I was just saying that, I was just going to say that he dropped something in 102 that related to campaign one,
Yeah.
which was like, oh my god,
Mhm.
like it was so like there was a physical reaction.
Yeah.
Uh,
And, and a lot of that too, like, that's definitely commendable and really cool and everything. And I mean, I'm sure, and even you guys in your games, I'm sure you have like mentions of previous campaigns. But you don't even need to have like a super long campaign to do that. I was thinking like, even in stream games or short campaigns, when it's accelerated like that, you can sort of, drop some of you just have to do them more often, or you're not going to be able to wait 2 years to do it. You know what I mean? So like with those bastards games, with encountering Vince Mom, it's like, oh yeah, that's a big moment. But when you're only playing for 12 episodes, like we're not going to have a year to wait for that to happen. So it
and
happens mid campaign. It's still impactful for
and
sure.
if you talk to your DM, like if your DM wants to include, those personal moments,
Mm-hmm.
even my RPG crate game, Megan, I talked to all the players. I'm like, hey, if there's anything that you want to have happen in the game, let me know. Because up to the point for up to Friday's game, I was running prepared material. So I'm like, if there's something that you want to have happen, let me know, and I'll find a way to work that into the story somehow. And only Megan's character, only Megan approached me about something that happened with them, and Omen had her hand cut off,
Oh
and
yeah.
she wore a glove because somehow she had a skeletal hand, but that was attachment, so that there was no mechanical benefits
Mm-hmm.
to her having a skeletal hand, but her hand had been removed. Um, didn't really know why. Didn't We didn't discuss why she had a skeletal hand, but it's like, I think this is cool, and I want this to come up. And I wound up, reaching out to Chris, the writer of the material, and I'm like, hey, where do you think this is going to be appropriate to be able to have something like this come up?
Oh.
Well, there happened to be a pseudo necromantic story arc for the first couple of sessions, for like sessions 2, 3, maybe 4. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to work this in here.
Oh, that's cool.
And so when you work those kinds of things in, you've got characters that are now bought into the story
Mm-hmm.
because they give a crud about what goes on with something that is meaningful to them.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, it just makes it easier for this comes up a lot in those Bastion games, whether while we're playing or afterwards. Like, even the idea of, everybody visualizes things different, right? So, something like that, like you said, doesn't have any mechanical benefit or anything, but it's just something cool that, the player wants to explore and have come up in the game. And, that stuff's just fun. Um, uh, and it just helps them get everybody get more immersed when it's like, well, this is how I'm picturing it, and trying to describe it, be creative, and when it's evocative like that, other players are going to respond too, because it is unusual and cool.
All right, so we're getting down to our last 5 minutes or so.
Uh-huh.
So since this thing is titled treasures of the DMG, I want to actually get down to the actual magic items. And
I was gonna do the same thing, but go ahead.
I've got 2 magic items that I've selected that I think bear mentioning. Um, the first one starts on page 152, and that's the bag of beans. This is a weird item. It's a wondrous item. It's rare, so it doesn't require attunement, which means it could be thrown in anywhere. But inside the heavy cloth bag are 3d4 dried beans. The bag weighs a half pound plus 1/4 pound for each bean it contains, which means your bean weighs a quarter of a pound. That's a big bean.
Yeah.
We're talking a potato more than a bean.
Yeah.
If you dump the bag's contents out on the ground, they explode in a 10-foot radius extending from the beans. DC 15 deck save, 5d4 damage, fire damage on a failed save, half as much on a successful one. So, like, regardless of how many beans are left in the bag, if you dump it out, that's what you cause to happen. If you remove a bean from the bag, plant it in dirt or sand, and then water it, the bean produces an effect 1 minute later from the ground where it was planted. The DM can choose an effect from the following table, determine it randomly, or create an effect. So that in and of itself is amazing. This is a great plot device of, you want something crazy to happen. This is the answer. And all you have to do is give this to a player who wants something to happen. There is a percentile die roll. I'm not going to go through every single effect, but read it. If you have access to the DMG, you want to see this particular thing. I should have actually looked and see if it was in the SRD, but I didn't. I forgot to do that.
Bag of beans, I think so.
But this could be a random roll chart on something happens, even if you remove the magic item capabilities. You just want something to happen? Boom. Here is a something happens chart. Crazy. But the added effect of you can create an effect outside of this, it is totally within the power of the DM when they plant a seed. Here is the next adventure. A giant tree sprouts with a door, and inside is the next dungeon. Perhaps this bag of beans is nothing but
dungeon entrances.
Dungeon entrances, and that's the campaign. You could totally
that stuff is some of my favorite stuff too. When you just find like one little quirky thing, or it just happens to spark some thought when you're looking at a magic item or whatever that can bring on those kind of ideas. That's fun.
So maybe where you plant it, maybe what time of day you plant it, or maybe what cardinal direction you are facing when you plant it. You could have so many different options for what happens with this. To me, I when it comes to hidden treasures of the DM, of the DMG, this is a bag of gold right here. I hands down, I think
that really is a cool idea too.
That people, I've never seen this used. I don't know whether I've properly read it before, but looking through, I was looking for things that were going to stand out, and that one does.
The other great thing that about using it as a campaign plot device is like, you can presume the characters might think like, well, we need to find out like what these mean, or what the purpose of this is, so they keep doing them every time. And you could just do totally random dungeons every time, and even if the players knew that, but it's like the characters might think like, oh, there must be some meaning why we're going to the steading of the hill giant chief this time, or whatever. One of the things that I had picked out as a hidden treasure is the cube of force, and it's really powerful and rare and everything, but I like it for two reasons. One is it's just a good example of like a really sort of complicated magic item, and if you're into sort of like making magic items and stuff like we are, it's sort of just a good example of like, okay, well, this thing can do a lot of stuff, but it's like worded succinctly and this and that. And the other reason I like it is because my very, very first Nerdarchy task ever, which was right after I asked you guys if I could write for your website, was to D&Dize the Sword of Omens. And I used the Cube of War sort of as a template for that reason, because I was like, well, look, the Sword of Omens and the Eye of Thunder can do a lot of stuff. And I was taking it so serious. I'm like, okay, these guys, they gave me an opportunity to write a thing. I got to make it really awesome. And they wanted it to be about the Sword of Omens. And so I spent like all evening one night just researching and, but my favorite magic item, and this has been since first edition, just because I think it's cool, as a Cloak of Arachnidia. It's just neat. I mean, you can climb on the walls, you can shoot webs. You're basically Spider-Man, and
Doing whatever a spider can.
yeah. And I was just, I had a character that got one back then, and it was just really cool. So I was just think it's a cool magic item. It's really versatile to be able to spider climb at will.
Well, for cool magic items, I go to the game where I first was a player for you, Hat of Disguise and the Cloak of
Oh,
Billowing. I had no end of fun with those.
yeah, those are very useful. Yeah, disguise is amazingly useful.
And I wasn't using it for things to get advantage of people.
Yeah,
I
sure.
was doing it for fun elements of mocking and mimicking the other adventurers. But
And we had
a
fun.
hidden gem, Qual's Feather Token, is a great example of how to make one-use magic items. I feel that in those things, there's a lot of fun things that you can do, and if you're looking for a template of how to make things that are just one and done,
Yeah,
there's your guidelines. There's
yeah,
what you can do. Um, I think they're fun, they're flavorful, but
yeah. And those are some wise words to wrap up this Monday live chat. If you don't know, we'll be live chatting every Monday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about different topics related to D&D. And we're here every weekday at noon Eastern, where Nerd Darkest Dave talks to industry and creative pros, just about nerdy stuff or whatever comes up. And we have a variety of live games like Tuesday night, Those Bastards, and Thursday afternoon Dabbers, and once a month RPG Crate / Chaos Crew TBD sponsor for the future.
I think at this point
on Fridays.
It's going to be the Chaos Crew.
Okay, Chaos Crew. There we go.
Until we hear something new.
Yeah. And so until the next time we all meet, stay nerdy. Changed it up there.